established UBM back in 2011. For those who don't know, we are currently taking Sharia advisory services from UBM, and uh, also Sheikh Hashim is currently lives in California, and he's the director of Islamic Institute over there. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Sheikh Hashim to say a few words and continue the bayan.
Right? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Can everybody hear? We're getting a double, or that's been rectified. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen. Wa ala alihi wa sahabati ajmain amma ba'd. So half of the people I can't see, actually. That's I don't think I've ever had a situation where people are behind walls, and I have to talk to them like that. But we'll deal with the situation as it is. So this is not going to be this is not a lecture. This is an informal. We can call it a mudhakara. We are just trying to remind ourselves who we are, what we are, and what is our objectives. And I think as an organization, that's quite important, isn't it? Generally, in organizations, we think about, these kind of things, but as individuals, sometimes this eludes us. Who am I? What am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? Right? So the first thing we always start with, and even in the religious institutions that I've taught in or teach in, the first thing I always start out with, just to remind myself and also the students, and we're all students, isn't it? As Nabi Alayhi Sallam says, that we should be students from the cradle to the grave. And so we're all in a continuous learning process. So the first thing we need to know, because learning, we need to learn something that's going to further us and sort of direct us and facilitate us to reach our objective, right? We don't just, if you ask a doctor, why do you study? Why are you studying medicine? He said, because I want to become a doctor. And when you become a doctor, what will you do? I'll treat patients and I'll open a clinic and I'll do such and such. You see? So whatever we're engaged in, there should be a purpose. Whatever we're learning, there should be an ultimate objective, isn't it? So generally, this is understood for everything in the world except for the human being. The purpose of the office, the purpose of the organization, the purpose of the air conditioner, the purpose of the microphone, the purpose of our shoes, the chair, right? That's pretty straightforward. Everybody understands that. Now, if I ask you, what is your purpose? Why are you here in the world? What would you answer? So why don't we do that, Yeah, good. Yeah. Allahu Akbar. Subhanallah. Wow. Probably, has everybody heard about this? You've all heard that ayat, right? Koi badi cheez nahi, na? It is a badi cheez. It is such a huge cheese you can't even imagine. And I'll tell you something that probably you're not aware of. And there's a lot of things because probably most of you, if not all of you, probably were born in house. Who was born in a house of Muslims? When's the first time you remember seeing salat? Someone offering namaz. Is there any time in your life that you didn't see anyone offering salat? I mean, from day one, you were seeing people offering salat, right? You were seeing people fasting. You were seeing people reading Quran, masjid, azan. Suppose you never saw any of those things in your life. Like me. People like us, we never saw those things. Right? So, In 1970, I happened to be traveling. Actually, what happened was I grew up in the United States. I was born in America. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and I grew up. My most formative years, you could say, were spent in Los Angeles because I was a musician. My whole family, we were musicians. And so, being a musician, you want to be in California, right? Because you want to be in Hollywood, right? And you want to become a star and famous, and you want to. And so that's how we grew up. We never heard of Allah. We never heard of Muhammad Sallallahu. We never heard of Quran. We never heard of Iman. We never saw Salat. We never saw fasting. We never saw, any of these things, right? So by the time I was around 16 or 17 years old, I realized that, there's a huge deficiency in my life. Not only in my life, but there's a huge deficiency in the entire society. You know? Everybody wants to be happy, right? We want satisfaction, you know? And it's interesting that, as a musician, how many people have heard of there was a group that's still around called the Rolling Stones, a famous, musical group, right? Did you hear about them? If you didn't, that's not a problem. You're probably all the better off. But, unfortunately, these are the kind of people that are famous in the world. So, like, that's my generation. We grew up, all at the same time. So these fellows who are originally from England, and actually some of them are still alive, which is amazing because in the musical profession, most of my colleagues never reach the age of 30. If you reach the age of 30 in that profession, you're going to live a long time because you can withstand that kind of lifestyle. So one of the most famous songs that they wrote, and one of their biggest hits, what they call it was a song called Satisfaction. But ironically, it wasn't about getting it. It was about, I just can't get no satisfaction. That was the whole song. It just went on and on and on and on. There's just one verse, I just can't get no satisfaction. And I try, and I try, and I try. I just can't get no satisfaction. And everyone say, oh, wow, isn't that wonderful? Great, we love it. What do you love? I mean, the guy's trying to tell you he's not getting any satisfaction. He's an international star. He's got his private fleet of jets, and he's got palaces all over the world, but he doesn't get any what? So what's the point? So what has he gotten out of his life? Zero. Not even a zero. He's in the deficit. That's deficit. And that's terrible. How many people are living like that? And we Muslims also, Muslims, quote unquote, we're also impressed by this whole culture, that, oh, wow, that's something great. The West, they just can't get any satisfaction because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't create us to get satisfaction. That's not why we're here. Not to say that you cannot be satisfied, not to say that you cannot be happy. You can. That's part of it. But that's not why we're here. We're not created for that. We're not created to enjoy 24/7, 365, enjoy. Maze, 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 maze. That's not why we're here at all. And this ayat that my brother here and you've all heard that. The point I'm trying to make here is you don't perhaps realize, none of us really realize, but I would like to, impress upon you all that you hearing that ayat from childhood and at least being aware of this concept is the biggest ni'mat on the face of this planet. You don't realize how lucky you are. I tell you something. So the point was that I was traveling. I was looking for the objective of life. Because after seeing this in Hollywood and seeing it in show business and seeing the West, and people are just totally, they can't live without drugs and alcohol and music and entertainment. Otherwise they go crazy, and they commit suicide. So we're missing something. What is that we're missing? We're missing the objective of life. We have a soul. We have a ruh. It's starving. And if your physical body is starving, what are you going to do? You're not going to sit around, quietly. You're going to be You're going to be in panic. You're going to, do drastic things because you're starving. The soul is starving. The human soul is starving. So it's doing drastic things. And that's why we see a drastic and extreme world. Because we have an extreme disconnect from who and what we are from what we're supposed to be. So long story short, so I left America. I left by 1970. I said, "This is crazy. This is insane. I'm looking for some sanity here. So I left and I traveled. I wanted to go to Ethiopia. I thought maybe I'll find this in the mountains of Ethiopia. You're right. So on my way to Ethiopia, I wanted to see. I knew a little bit about Muslims because I don't know if you've heard of Malcolm X. Who's heard of Malcolm X? He was probably the most important figure in Islam in the West, because all of us who accepted Islam my age, we all were influenced by him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him and give him a very high place. The Shaheed, Malik Abdul Shabazz, actually his name is. Anyway, so he mentioned about Muslims and in his autobiography, which I had read, back in the 1960s. And I was a big fan of his, so I said, okay, I want to see these Muslims also. Anyway, so I could go on for hours talking about that. Hopefully it'll be a book one day. It's in the process. So maybe Qordata will do some digital something about it, Let's see. Anyway, so after traveling through Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, now I'm going through Egypt. I'm almost reaching to Ethiopia because now I'm in Egypt and I'm going into Sudan. Between Egypt and Sudan is a big lake. It's actually a man-made lake which is made on the river Nile. And it's called Buhaira Nasser. It's a big man-made lake called Buhaira Nasser. Okay? And so we were on a boat traveling. There was people, there was animals, there was cargo. It was one of these really old boats with a paddle wheel on the back. And so it was a several days journey actually to reach to a place called Wadi Halfa in Sudan. So on the way on that boat, there was a group of camel traders, Bedu. You know Bedu? Dihatis, the desert dwellers, the Bedouins of the desert. And they used to take their camels, they would take their camels to Egypt, where they would get a better price, and they would sell their camels, and they would come back to Sudan. So these fellows were coming back on the boat along with, so we were on the same boat together. So they used to call the adhan, and they used to, of course, offer their salat in Jamaat on the boat. Now, as I said, since you guys have seen salat since day one, तो ये आदि चीज़ है ना, ये कोई बड़ी बात तो नहीं है ना. One time, fast forward, after I became a Muslim, I went back to America. I was visiting my father in Colorado. And I was offering my salat. This is back in 1972, I think so. And so I was offering my prayers, my salat, in a room. And one of my relatives inadvertently entered into the room, and she saw that I was praying. And she just very quietly, came out of the room very quietly, closed the door, and she left. And then after I finished my prayer, so she came and said, I'm really sorry, I didn't know that you were praying, I must have disturbed you. I said, no, that's okay. Now, when people are offering prayer around us, how do we consider that? If somebody's offering prayer in our house, do we turn off the TV? Do we stop talking? Do we stop the joking? Gup shup, khatam ho jate hain? Really? Somebody, when they're in salat, actually we're supposed to be talking about salat, so I'm going to, so I'm highlighting this, you see. Salat, this is a direct communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where somebody is talking with the creator of the universe. So when we say Allahu Akbar, now, why do we raise our hands and say Allahu Akbar? What's the point? We are signifying that we are now cutting ourselves off from the entire creation. The entire creation now is negated. And now Allahu Akbar. Allah is great. Everything else is insignificant. Behaysiyat, as you say. And now we enter into dialogue with the creator of the universe. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. You know, all the praise of everything that is worthy of praise, every type of praise that can be imagined, it all is actually deserving to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the one deserving. He's the creator of it. Whatever there is that is praiseworthy, He's the creator of it. Right? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. You know, mercy, mercy, benevolence in creating the creation and then sustaining the creation and being so benevolent to the creation, and yet we are so thankless of all this benevolence. So we're reminded of that. So actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us how to praise Him, how to connect with Him, how to have a dialogue with Him. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. And ultimately, this is the short life we leave here, and then Maliki Yawmiddin, the king of the day of judgment, is going to decipher and sort out and take account of each and every action. Every action of the eye, every action of the tongue, every action of the heart, even what the mind thinks. It's all going to be. ما لهذا الكتاب لا يغادر صغيرة ولا كبيرة إلا أحصاها ووجدوا ما عملوا حاضرا ولا يظلم ربك أحدا. And the book will be presented. Every single action will be presented. And what kind of a book is this? Every single thing that I've done, that I've said, that I've thought, it's all there. No small, no large, nothing has been left out. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala injustice is not within the characteristic of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not a characteristic of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all. Justice, pure justice, injustice is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is incapable of that. Allahu Akbar. So, salat is this dialogue, you see. So all of us, I would suggest, as we're all Muslims and we've all been offering salat probably our entire lives, and hopefully we're going to, inshallah, increase on that, we should be cognizant of what we're saying. So let's start from Salat al-Asr today, okay? Let us think what we're doing. Allahu Akbar, what are we saying? And, I don't know Arabic, I'm not. You don't have to know Arabic to understand Surah Al-Fatiha. At least understand the basic maqasid, the basic, the meanings, right? How many of you don't understand Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen? Anybody doesn't understand? You all understand that, right? Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Understood? Maliki Yawmiddin. Understood? Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Kya matlab? Yeah, and the interesting thing here in the Arabic tarkib, in the Arabic, iyaka, only to you. Iyaka na'budu. And here, Ubudiya business model, UBM, what kya matlab? Ubudiya business model. Ubudiya. This is the unwan. Iyaka na'budu. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. This is where Ubudiya comes from. What is Ubudiya? Ubudiya means I'm a slave and I have a master. Sidi Bat. This is not a very difficult concept. I'm a slave and I have a master. No, I'm free. My freedoms. Who said you're free? You're not free at all. This really gets me. Now this incident that has just recently happened, and they got this thing. It's my body. I do with it what I want. ये क्या कहते हैं वो उर्दू में? मेरे जिस्म मेरे मर्जी. अच्छा, where did you come up with this? ये कहाँ से आया? मेरा जिस्म. अच्छा, did you create? How many cells do you have in your jism, by the way? Do you have any idea? Nobody knows. You should know. There's a lot of data involved there. You have anywhere between 60 to 90 trillion cells in your body. 60 to 90 trillion cells in your body. How many of those cells did you have anything to do with their creation? Did you create any of those cells? By the way, atoms. How many atoms do you have in your body? We're talking about cells. That's a pretty big unit. And you've got around, 70, 80, 90 trillion of those. Now, one cell has about that many atoms. And then we know that atom, that's not the smallest particle. You've got particles in the atom. Probably the particle that we understand, that's got particles, and it goes, يعني هلم جرا, as we say in Arabic. It goes on and on and on and on. As big, as big, as big as no one can imagine, as small, as small, as small as nobody can imagine as well. And so, who's the creator of that? My jism. Oh, okay. Which of these cells did you create, by the way? Okay, forget about create. Which of them do you sustain? Do you nourish? Do you control? Do you have any control over anything in your body? Least of all, we have control of our tongue. That's the big problem. We get in trouble with our tongue much more than we get it with anything else, right? So, and then mere marzi. So it's not even your body in the first place. It is an amana. It doesn't belong to you. You didn't create it. You don't sustain it. And you are not going to ultimately be, the account taker for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created these bodies and He gave us to use. Just like you're given a laptop, you're given a car, If you get a higher position, you get, this big of a car. So then suppose you say, okay, this is my car, put no-numbered fuel in it, don't service it, bash it into here and there, then what's going to happen? When it's time to turn in the car, to the company, then what's going to happen? Kya ho gaya? Yeah, and if you can't, you'll probably end up in jail. I don't know, in Pakistan, you might get away with it, but in America, you don't get away with it. They'll get you, But you'll be in trouble because you didn't take care of the amana. That's an amana. This body is not ours. It's an amana. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So not only we can't use it any way that we want, taking care of it is also, this is why we came up with another system which we call HML, Healthy Meaningful Living, which our brother Luqman, he attended that workshop, the very beginning of that program. And we're trying to, understand that this body also, this is an amanat. We have to take care of it. It's not like it's just a nice thing to do. This is an amanat. We have to live a life of ubudiyah, a life of servitude, a life of slaves, a life of, servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that requires vitality. That requires, a healthy mind, soul, body, emotions, social setup, and a healthy environment as well. Yeah? So the objective of our being here, our presence in this world, is to be slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be manifestations of that slavery. And the amazing thing about it is, people think a slave, that the poor guy, but we have such a master that treats his slaves with such beneficence and such mercy and such, gratitude and such favors. Subhanallah. So this is what it's all about, So I was talking about this objective, and I was talking about how lucky you all are. We're all very lucky, but particularly those who were born in this situation. So just as I mentioned, the first time I saw this salat, I saw these, Bedouins. They call the adhan and then they say Allahu Akbar. Now imagine, I've never seen this before, even though I've been traveling in North Africa now for the past year almost. But I never saw Muslims actually praying together because, in North Africa, they follow the Maliki madhab, which they're very strict about non-Muslims not entering the masjids. Some of the other madhab are more lenient with that. But in any case, so I never, was able to actually, I always wanted to go in the mosque and see the Muslims praying, but I never saw that. So here I'm getting actually a demonstration. And I'm telling you, that was life-changing. Absolutely life-changing. And here, these people, I've never seen this. And so they call the adhan, then they call the iqamat, and they're standing in a perfect line. And mind you, these are Bedouins. These people are standing in a line with a discipline like, commandos. Allahu Akbar. Like one body. Eyes fixed to this place, and their hands all fixed. And I'm looking at this, wow. In the church and these temples and all these guys, you don't see anything like this. People are singing or clapping or doing all kinds of stuff. It has nothing like the salat of Islam. Yeah? So, that I'm just watching this. And then I don't have no clue what's going to happen, thereafter. And then all of a sudden, Allahu Akbar. And then like one body, ruku. I'm like, wow, you know? The concentration, the focus. I mean, these guys are serious. They are not only focused, but the unity and collectivity of their worship is something unique. So I'm already, devastated. Then Sami Allahu liman hamida, and then like one body, they're standing up, and then Allahu Akbar. They all went into sajda, and I was just finished. And it just struck me that whatever religion that's in, that is the supreme manifestation of servitude to the creator of this universe. That's it. That's last word. And I had been doing all these, spiritual things, yoga and meditation and Buddhist mantras, and I don't know anything that was out there, in America, back in the late 60s, that became the kind of a trend because we were all spiritually, starving. So anything that had anything to do with spirituality, we would just swallow it. But this was something on a totally different level. So I knew from that moment, this is what I left America looking. They've got it. These guys, right? So this salat that we take for granted, and people offering salat and we're just talking and having. This is the connection with the creator of the universe. Suppose you get a ticket or you get a note in the mail at 3 o'clock today or at 5:30 today. The Prime Minister is going to he's invited you for a Zoom meeting. You. Oh. How would that hit you? You'd be shocked. And now when Prime Minister Saab gets on the screen, are you going to, scratch my head and, think about, what I'm going to eat tonight and, or you're going to be totally focused. This Prime Minister talking to me directly, wow, Huh? So who is the Prime Minister? And he's just like you and me. I mean, okay, he's Prime Minister, give him his due. That's fine, okay. Hierarchy, we believe in that. That's fine. But he's a human being. Yesterday he was a cricket captain. Today he's a Prime Minister. Tomorrow he'll be dust in the grave, like everybody else. May Allah give him tawfiq and, and all that. But after all, he's a human being. So what do you think about, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us an announcement. Okay, at 5:30 today, you're going to be talking with me. I have an appointment with you. It's called Salat al-Asr. And then again at Maghrib, I'm going to talk to you again. And I'm giving you a chance in the night as well. And then in the morning. The cricketers, your Pakistani team, they're good friends of mine. Especially Saeed Anwar is a very close friend of mine. We were just together actually yesterday. So they invited me some years ago, they invited me to talk to Bob Woolmer. Bob Woolmer, they was their coach, when Inzimam and those guys that was your team. So, poor guy, he died, that was shocking, He's a very nice guy, actually. So, anyway, so they asked me to talk to him. So we were talking, and, I asked him, I said, look, Bob, what I understand, I don't know anything about cricket. Actually, the only thing we know in America about cricket, it's this little animal that makes these sounds in the night. Cricket, Jiminy Cricket. When we were kids, we had a cartoon, and now we find out it's a game also. I don't know. I still don't understand how it works. But anyway, so I said, I heard, they told me that he was, I think he was originally from England, then he coached South Africa, played whatever. So I said, you've been involved with South Africa and England and all. And then now you're involved with these guys. So, I mean, what kind of experience did you find that to be? I expected him to say, oh my God, But he said something very interesting. He said, this has been the most rewarding experience of my life. Very seriously. I said, really? How is that? Why? He said, because in England, and South Africa and these places where I had been, they have everything. They got infrastructure, they've got system, they got planning, they got foresight. Here, zero. But the talent is formidable. The talent is unbelievable. So he said it's like working with scratch, and it was just, and you could see he really had, a very close connection. There was really a great affection and that they had, and then the poor guy died. Anyway, so, but the point I wanted to make was, so he asked me this, he said, look, I've got a question. This Fajr prayers, these morning prayers, can we make this, can we like have this like around 8 or 9 o'clock? Because this is, this is very early in the morning and it's messing up our whole schedule, our training and all that. I said, no, Bob, we can't do that. He said, why? I said, if you, have you ever been up, at the crack of dawn, just when the very beginning of dawn starts, before the sun rises? Have you ever been up at that time? Oh, yeah, I've actually, yeah, sure. So did you get a feeling about what kind of feeling do you get at that time of the night or early morning? Now, when the sun actually comes up, does that feel, it feels the same, or do you feel there's kind of a change in the whole cosmos and the whole feeling, of the time? So, no, yeah, that's a big difference. Yeah. See, so that is a very special time. The time of Fajr, the time of dawn, between the time of dawn and this, right? This is a very spiritual time. And so therefore, this is the time we have to offer our prayers, So, okay. But at least they should go to sleep on time. I said, yeah, you're right there. They should go to sleep, on time, And that's another very important thing that I've also noticed here in Pakistan. The sleep patterns are really, you should have mercy on yourselves. Get up early and go to sleep early, When we were kids, we used to go to sleep at 8 o'clock in the night. And when it was a weekend, we could stay up until 9 o'clock. That was late. Early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and, That's not from Quran or Sunnah, by the way, But it's a correct saying. It's very true. And there's many sayings in Hadith that substantiate that whole concept. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that was his Sunnah. Early up, he would be early in the morning, he would be up at the time of tahajjud. Sometimes a half of the night, sometimes a third of the night, sometimes a sixth of the night. But he would always be up before Fajr. And he would take a short rest, qaylula, before Dhuhr, or perhaps after Dhuhr, generally before Dhuhr. And then after Isha, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says he doesn't like to sleep before Salatul Isha and he doesn't like to talk. Gatherings, socializing after Salat al-Isha. So how do we stand on that? Yeah. And because we're not standing on that, standing in the morning is pretty difficult. Why? Because we're drained. And did you know that the quality of sleep between 9 o'clock and 12 or say 1 o'clock, it's 3 times more than after that. 1 hour of sleep in the early part of the night is worth 3 hours later on. So we're coming to work and we're, that's why, coffee is such a popular thing in the West, and probably it's getting popular here. Chai, it's the same thing, same concept, prop ourselves up with caffeine, because we didn't get proper sleep. Right? So what was I talking about? I was talking about the salat, right? So, the salat that I saw, let's make an intention, right? Starting from when? Salat al-Asr. The next appointment that we have, to keep this is an appointment that we have with our Creator. The next appointment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to speak with our Rabb is when? 5:30. And then we get another chance at Maghrib. So keep this in mind. Okay. Now, the last thing I wanted to say was, we'll go back to the beginning. The beginning was, what's the object? Why are we here on this planet? And how lucky we are that we know this. As I said, myself, I had no clue. Why am I here? I started realizing there's a creator. I started realizing there's a whole creation. And somehow I fit in this whole scheme, and everybody fits, but how, why, what? Unclear. And then, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like people say, how did you come to Islam? So, one of our friends, new Muslim also, I asked him the same question. How'd you come to it? He said, actually, I didn't come to Islam. Islam came to me. You follow that? So it's not like we, with our intelligence or our ability, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His mercy, He brought Islam to us. Okay. Anyway, so after becoming a Muslim, obviously, then I come to know these things, by grace of Allah. So after I became a Muslim and I came back to America, so I probably was in 1972 again. So I went to visit some of my relatives, particularly my grandmother, who was still alive in those days, and my cousins and some of my uncles and aunts. And at that time, my cousins, they were students in Harvard, and particularly the eldest one of those three cousins of mine, you could say my chacha's bete, chacha ke bete. That's interesting. And in Urdu, you have a chacha, you have a taya, In America, they're just an uncle, big, small, otherwise, So anyway, my chacha's, three children who are all now grandparents now, But in those days, they were young students, and the eldest was this. And they all graduated. Ultimately, they all graduated from Harvard, and they were top of the line, geniuses, every single one of them, and they're all first in their classes and all that kind of thing. So I just asked them, I said, "What's your object of life?" And we're talking to a student in Harvard, right? Harvard is supposed to be a badi cheese, huh? That's what they say, you're supposed to, that's, and just think about it. To get to Harvard, you don't just walk into Harvard. You have to have, the top of the line high school. You had the top of the line middle school. You went to the best grammar school and so forth and so on. By the time you get to Harvard, just think of the resources that have been spent on this individual to get to that point. And what's the sum total of all of that expenditure and resources and effort? Why do you exist? I don't know. Really. This is exactly what he said. My cousin. I don't know. Never even thought about it. Actually, he didn't say I didn't think about it, but you could see that he never thought about it. And most of the people in the West, they don't think about it. And those who start thinking about it, they say, no, this is too big. You forget about it. They'll take a drink. Or, smoke some marijuana or something. Forget about it. Because this really gets them nervous. And then if you mention about death, don't talk about death, Why don't talk about death? That's the only reality of life. That's the only certainty of life. Are you certain that you're going to live until Salat al-Asr today? Anybody? Are you certain that you're going to get your paycheck at the end of the month? Are you certain that you're going to get, have a job at the end of the year? We don't know anything. We don't know we're going to be alive, actually. There's only one certainty in life, and that is death. And therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, this whole concept of ubudiyya, slavery, servitude, wa'bud rabbaka hatta ya'tiyaka al-yaqeen. Remain in the servitude, subject yourself, and immerse yourself into the obedience of your Creator until the one certainty of life overtakes you, which is death. That's what we're living for. We're living to die. I like what Faisal says. He says, death is the day worth living for. Surah Al-Mulk. الذي خلق الموت والحياة. Maut والحياة. Maut first, hayat after. That's the answer. We're living to die, because when you die, we're going to actually go to the real life. That's the real life. وَإِنَّ الْآخِرَةَ لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانِ. The world of the hereafter, the world of the next life, that is the real life. That's where we're going to live. We're not living here. We're not, people said, are you permanently here in Pakistan? Permanently? What are you talking about? Nobody's permanent here. We're here today, we're gone tomorrow. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, "Kun fi dunya kannaka ghariba abir sabil." Be in this world like you're a stranger, or you're a traveler on the way. That's what we are. We're travelers. We're just travelers. And the idea is to get to our destination. And that destination will be met after death. So we are living here to prepare for that day. So it's not something to be ghabraiki baat nahi. One time in my workshop, in our workshop we did that fikr al-maut, we did that also. We went out in the desert and we thought about maut, thought about our grave. So we did this in Islamabad, one time. And so there was a teacher of psychology said, hey, what are you talking about? You're going to get everybody depressed. Hey, don't talk about death. I said, why not? So then I explained to him, I said, our concept of death is very different than the concept of the West. Why the people in the West are afraid to talk about death? They don't want to hear about it. Even the person is dying, they're not going to say, hey man, you're dying, Say kalima, make tawbah, do istighfar, you're leaving. You never want to talk about death to the dying person in the West. Don't mention death. Oh, everything's fine, you're okay. The guy's going to leave here tomorrow. He's leaving any moment, He's going to face his creator, You're not preparing him for that. They don't have this concept. So our concept of death is that it is, as is mentioned in the riwayat, it's a tuhfat al-mu'min. It's a gift for the people of Iman, because now they're going to release the shackles of ubudiyah, as it were. Servitude is here. In the hereafter, we'll be free totally. وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَشْتَهِي أَنفُسُكُمْ وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَدَّعُونَ. In Akhirat, can you have here anything you want? Can you live anywhere you want? Can you have a house any way you want? Can you eat everything you want? One plate of biryani and khalas. Yeah. Can you have, the wives of whatever you want? Can the wives have the husbands whoever they want? No. Nothing here is how you want. It's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you in, the position He puts you in, the condition He puts you in. And the whole idea for us is to be content with that. And if so, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us a life forever and ever and ever, whatever we want, whatever we desire. In fact, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentions even above and beyond that, for the people of taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared what no eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard. Nobody could even imagine that. But for who? Not for everybody. There's a big Jannah, there's a big Jahannam too. It's not all, everything's fine, it's all good. It's not all good. There's haqq, there's batil, there's right, there's wrong, there's truth, there's falsehood. There's Jannah, there's Jahannam. Haqq is the place of Jannah. Batil, falsehood, all of that is the place is Jahannam. So we're here to prepare for that day. We're here to prepare for the real life. We're not here simply in data core because we're collecting data and we're making software. We're here because we're Muslims and we're providing a service to humanity, and hopefully it's a good service. And if we're doing so, that's also part of our life of servitude. Servitude isn't just in the masjid, it's not just in the, in the zawiyah. Life of servitude is in everything that we do. How you talk to your customer, that can be servitude, that can be an act of worship. The honesty and integrity that you show to your clients, this is also an act of worship. Being truthful in your marketing practices is also an act of worship. Holding to your commitments and keeping your commitments is a huge act of worship. So it's not like, we're not just talking about go to the masjid and, go to, and in the night. Everything that we do, and that's why we came up with this whole model where we talk about Ubudiyya business model. This has to do with the sector or the part of our life which involves business activities. That's one part of our life. Every part of our life should be predicated on the concept of ubudiyah. That's why we're here. So wa'bud rabbuka, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ. It's all about everything that we do. So just as salat is a pattern of servitude, every act that we do, every activity, every action that we do can and should be an act of servitude. So we're here to learn that, inshallah. Right? We don't have to go to a madrasa. We don't have to, leave. We need to put that into our daily activities. Put that into our schedule. We need to learn things. Just like we're upgrading our professional skills, we need to upgrade daily our level of ubudiyah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that requires learning. It doesn't require, hours and hours a day. It requires a few minutes every day. One thing that we can do also, I'll leave my my Facebook and Twitter and YouTube channels also, because daily I've got a dars of Quran and Hadith and Suluk and Sirah and other things that perhaps you can tune in on that. Since you're connected to the West, I come to find out that all your clients are in the West, right? Okay, so you're giving to the West, take from the West also, yeah. So I've got my programs, so you can tune into that. So and there's a lot of resources that we have. So on a daily basis, we need to be upgrading ourselves. You know, raising our level of ubudiyah, and that requires raising our level of understanding and knowledge in that, and in practice, and then connecting with the people who are connected. So we have this. We have in our system. We say connect with the connected, and disconnect with. Can you explain that to me?
Who are connected to Allah,
Yeah.
you should connect with them.
Yeah.
And who are disconnected with Allah, you should disconnect with them.
Yeah. Now, connecting with those who are connected, that's pretty straightforward. Now, disconnecting with the disconnected, that needs a little explanation. Because somebody says, well, you know what? Just about everybody I'm dealing with is disconnected. Now, what do I do? Huh? So what we do is, find the connected people, have some time with them, some sohbah as we call it, But people that we have to, deal with and transact with. So it means that we don't make them, our buddies, that we hang out with all the time. We spend our, transact with them, and hopefully we become influencers and not influenced. And if we have another expression, we say be influencers and don't become kun mu'athiran wa la takun muta'athiran. Be an influencer and don't be. So whoever we meet with, they should actually be influenced by us, And we're trying to be slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're trying to display good akhlaq and all that. So whoever we have to transact with, whoever we have to interact with, so we display that with them. And to the extent that we need to transact and interact, we'll do that, But we'll spend quality time, and we'll like to be connected, continuously, and spend our time and hang out, if you will, with those people who are connected. And those who are not connected, make dua for them, and, according to our transactions, try and help them along in the journey. Is that clear, everybody? Okay? So, Jazakumullah khair, I think we've taken quite a lot of time as it is. There might be questions. Not that I have any answers, but, you can ask whatever you like. Do we want a Q&A section? Any questions? No questions. So in other words, we understood everything. So we're going to, mashallah, just do it. Right? Okay. Huh? The people that are connected remotely, maybe give them some time to ask. Oh, okay. Yeah. That's fine. And who's receiving that information? The people who are online, who's getting that feed? Huh?
They are connected to online, so you'll get their questions directly.
Yeah. So who's watching that? Anything is coming in? So you're gonna hear the questions there because it just turned the volume up. So we're gonna hear the questions. Oh, okay. So it doesn't seem as though we have questions. So I do have a lot of questions. A lot of questions. Okay.
So in namaz, when we are praying,
Yeah.
a lot of thoughts come in, right? So that's just natural and sometimes invited as well. So what do we do then? What's the one trick that?
One trick. Yeah. What's the Panadol that we can take for that? Huh? Well, there isn't a Panadol for that. But actually, this somebody asked this, one of our ulama. Somebody came to me and he said, these wasawas. Actually, technically we call that wasawas, right? And actually there's a special shaitan, and forgetting his name, Finzik or something like that. Anyway, there's a special type of shayateen that come just when we're in salat. And their whole objective is get us engaged in thinking about anything besides salat. Keep on, remember this, remember that, remember this, remember that, until we end up, we forgot how many rakats and so many other things. So anyway, so somebody said, Shaykh, how do we, just stop these thoughts? He said, stop it. Stop it. I mean, we have some control over ourselves, right? So first of all, we don't really even cognizantly focus on that. How many of us, before we went for salat, we thought, okay, in this salat, I'm going to, inshallah, really focus. No, Allah, help me focus. And then we also have sunnah before most of our salats, right? Sunnah qabliya wa ba'diya, you're right? You have 2 rakats before Fajr and 4 before Dhuhr and so forth and so on. So one of the objectives of that is like a preparation, And usually also another thing that happens is we usually go to salat like at the last minute. Actually, the takbir has already started and maybe even 1 or 2 rakats, and then we jump up from our desk and we run straight to the salat. And so obviously we need to debrief, if you will, The mind needs to, it needs to, kind of, get into a different mode, as it will. So therefore, we would do well to have a specific amount of time before salat. Suppose salat is 1:15 zuhr. So suppose if, like, at least by, say, 10 to 1 or quarter to 1 perhaps, have your tahara and then wudu. Actually, wudu is the beginning of our salat, begins with wudu, right? And usually in wudu also, we're talking and we're thinking about other things, starting from wudu. And therefore it's also not, it is makruh. It's disliked to talk and have conversation during wudu. We should be concentrating on the fact that now we're purifying ourselves, not only outwardly, but inwardly as well. All the sins are being washed away. When we wash our hands, all these sins that our hands have been, perhaps, moving towards it, our mouth, is being washed, our tongue, which is sinning again and again and continuously. And then we wash our face and what we've seen and what we might have been hearing. So all of these sins are being washed away. And then similarly with the hands and with the feet. So if we say Bismillah and we're cognizant of that, then from the time that we start our wudu, we're going to be, entering into a mode of focus, right? And then when we make our wudu and then we're proceeding to salat, we're also in salat, as mentioned in the hadith. We're walking from our house, we're walking from our workplace or wherever we are. We're also in this stage, we should also not be engaging in talk, seeing our phone and answering our WhatsApps and all of this stuff. So from the time we start wudu, we do well, myself included, turn this all off, put this all away, shelf all of that stuff, and now totally focused on salat. So by the time we actually, and then we get to the masjid and we've been involved in dhikr, and then we get to the masjid and then with the attention, we offer our sunnah, and now, and actually we do this, if we remember in our workshop, we actually do this practice. We have an exercise. So we need to practice that actually. It's like anything else. We need to practice offering salat with khushu and hudu. And if we practice it, it's not like rocket science. I mean, what you guys are dealing in is much more difficult, intellectually than offering salat with khushu and hudu. That's so simple. Anybody can do that. But it needs some focus. It needs some attention. And hopefully, inshallah, we'll start doing that, inshallah. And we can develop our culture of that. And we help one another with that. Ta'awanu 'ala al-birri wa taqwa. Remind one another about these things, And inshallah, and as you do that, also pray for me that I should do this as well, that I get tawfiq. We all need tawfiq to do these things. And it sounds very easy, and if it wasn't for nafs and shaitan and the bad environment and our bad habits, it would be very easy. But those elements are there, and they're always there. And that's the test and trial that we have to, face. That's being human, is being, put to these tests and trials. Okay? Was that helpful at all? Okay. Jazakumullah khair. That was one. So many you had, huh? Start with that one, and if you work on that one, and the next time I come, we'll do question two, inshallah. That should keep you busy. Yeah.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
So how did your family react to this conversion? your mother? And were you able to influence any other in your family?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, uh, fortunately, you don't know me before Islam, right? But of course, my mother did, and so it was pretty, my mother she's an amazing person. She's still alive, by the way. She's now, she just had her 93rd birthday. And one of my cousins said, enjoy this day because you'll never be 92 after this. You know? But she's still, and actually we got this whole health thing, physical health thing from my mother. We were brought up on organics. We were brought up on, good, lifestyle choices. And my mother's a certified organic gardener and all that. And so now, um, my mother and father divorced actually in the mid 60s, and that's how we ended up in California. Actually, I wasn't born there. So with my mother, we went to California, myself and my two sisters and brother. So we were, three teenagers. My younger brother was still quite young, but myself and my two sisters were all teenagers in Southern California, musicians and hippies and all of that. And my poor mother has to deal with us. And it was pretty traumatic. So my mother, among many other achievements that she's, done in her life, she was nominated as the woman of whatever, where she lives in Colorado. And those who nominated her, they said, and one of the most amazing things about Mary Elder is that she was able to raise three teenage kids as a single mother in Los Angeles in the 1960s, and that itself was a huge, accomplishment. So I mean, we were really, out of control. So obviously, after becoming a Muslim, and now, I've married and I have children and all these things. So at least it's better than what I was before. So nobody gave me a hard time. And my whole family, alhamdulillah, they appreciate that, living a life as a musician, as one of these hippie revolutionaries. So obviously, there's discipline in my life now. Um, a lot of those things, were changed. However, for them to, enter into Islam, they were not able to do that. But they appreciate. My mother has been here in Pakistan 3 times. Yeah. And she appreciates a lot of things. And one of the times that she came the day after Benazir Bhutto was murdered. The next day, she came in the middle of all of that. And so none of actually my younger brother did take Shahada. He said the Shahada, but unfortunately he didn't remain on that. I tried to get him to live with me, but he wouldn't leave California. I was living in New York in those days. So none of my immediate family have actually accepted Islam, but I have, alhamdulillah, seen and facilitated hundreds of people to accept Islam, but not my own family. Subhanallah. But they appreciate, but there's certain things that they can't, um, my mother's also, a very big feminist, the whole feminist movement thing, she's very big on that. She still can't really understand the position of women in Islam, although we've explained that to her, and she's, yes, but, so pray for her, inshallah. She's a wonderful woman, and she's, just an amazing person. And when I was a teacher in Benurdi town, so she came, the first time she came, when she came, I took her to visit the madrasa. So she came and she used to wear, khimar, the hijab, and she actually covered her face when she came into the masjid. So the teacher said, did she accept Islam? I said, make dua for her. But she has a very high regard of respect, and for my sons and daughters-in-law, who are all Muslims, and I've got 12 children and 30-some grandchildren, and most of them are Hafiz of Quran and ulama, and she respects all of them, and she appreciates that. My father is, pray for him as well. He's a very staunch atheist. And that was actually how we were raised. There's no God, there's no life after death, and that's all a lot of nonsense. And he's still alive also. So pray for him as well. And so my family, my immediate family, they're pretty tough. They're pretty tough clients. But we've seen many people accept Islam, alhamdulillah. Other than that. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So we talked about objectives and for us Muslims, we know it's pretty clear. It's all about ubudiyah. But for non-Muslims,
That was the point I was trying to make. And realize how lucky we are. And if we didn't have wahi, if we didn't have wahi and we were not taught that, we wouldn't know that. As I mentioned, my cousin, who's, much more intelligent than me, what's your object of life? I don't know. And if you ask most of the people, you ask people in the university, you know, ask the people, ask the professors in Harvard, there's no objective. I mean, what is so they don't
there
know.
are Jews, there are Christians, they also have their objectives.
They would answer something similar because also they connect with their scriptures, and obviously, the same objective was mentioned in the Bible, in the Torah, in the Injil, in the Zabur, even though they've been twisted around and they've been adulterated. But of course, that objective is there in those books as well, because the basis of religion has always been one. In the Dina, in Allah al-Islam, it's always the religion, and the objective is submission. And that was the theme that all the prophets came with. They was just upgraded, with the coming of each prophet, sequentially. There was an upgrading of Islam, but it was always Islam. And the objective of Islam has always been the same. Jannat has always been there. Jahannam has always been there. The qualities of Allah have always been there. Aqaid never change. No Nabi came with some new aqaid, or something like that. But the mode of salat or the mode of zakat or some of those things, as man progresses and develops, so similarly, those principles also developed along until the finality of the Quran and the sending of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So yes, those people who have a religious background, they would have some clue. They would probably answer something similar to that. But many of them also really, they wouldn't be able to answer with clarity. Whereas you ask a chota bacha, you go in a village here, and I've done this actually. ये छोटा बच्चे इसको पकड़ो. आप उसमें आपको क्यों बनाया? Allah की इबादत के लिए. Maybe he doesn't really understand that, totally, but yeah, he knows that. You ask a kid in Arabic, you ask a little Arab kid anywhere in the Arab world, you say, خلقت لأعبد ربي. You say the same thing. And you ask the Harvard, professor, I don't know. It's not even important. It's not important. Okay, let's see. After death, let's see how important it is or it wasn't. So, yeah. And that's why we always start from there, and we have to, reaffirm that. And it's not just we learned that, we were kids and ho gaya. That's to realize that and understand that the depth of that statement, it's a lifelong, learning process. Illa liya'budun. This is a concept which has no ending, because it means that everything that we do is an act of worship, which means, I'm talking, I'm thinking, I'm sitting, I'm eating, I'm sleeping, I'm marrying, I'm having children, I'm praying, whatever I'm doing is illa liya'budun. That's deep. That's, the scope of that is unlimited. So it's not a simple thing. Yeah. Any other questions?
Assalamu alaikum, Shaikh.
Yeah.
There's a question that how can we keep concentration in our prayers as we get diverted sometimes? So
Yeah,
can you guide us?
we just had a long talk on that. Did you hear that? Didn't hear that?
Yes, I was hearing.
So that's it.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that was the same question. Yeah. So that whole concept that, we need to really cognizantly, focus on that. Yeah. From when we start wudu and we're going towards salat, and then, really focus on it. And one of the things that perhaps I failed to mention, and I'll mention that as you brought that up, is whatever we're saying in salat, we need to know what we're saying. And as I pointed out, probably we already know that. So focus on and concentrate on what we're saying. When we say Allahu Akbar, really think about that. Allah is the greatest, and greatest is like, it's not like comparative. 5 is greater than 1, and 10 is the greatest of 1 and 5. And there's no comparison. Allah's greatness is beyond, it's unlimited greatness. Yeah.
So by thinking that these are not important,
Well, we just heard about how important it is.
so how can we change this thought that the fills are also important?
Well, if we think about what I just said, why is there nafil? You know, our fard salat, fard salat, it has to be, to be acceptable, it has to be complete, right? And the first thing we're going to be asked about on the day of judgment is what? How many sales you made at Qordata, and how, you. No, you're going to be asked about salat. First thing, iman and kufr. That's the first thing a Muslim is going to be asked about is salat. If salat is found complete, acceptable, then everything else that he did is also going to be fine. If there's a deficiency in salat, everything else is going to be, that deficiency is going to spill over into every action of his. So, is our salat perfect? I mean, so we need to fortify that salat. As we mentioned earlier, by preparing ourselves to, when we get to fard salat, we'd have all that, we'd have that head start, if you will. And plus, any deficiency in fard salat we made up from the nawafil, from the sunan and the nawafil. And also, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that my slave cannot approach me in any better way than through those activities which I have made fard on him, like our salat, like our zakat, like our good character, being honest, etc., etc. And then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and this is in the Hadith Qudsi, which means that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is saying, and the words are Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So he says, so Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is actually saying, and my slave continues to approach me, to get closer to me through nawafil. Through what? Nawafil. Hatta uhibbahu. Until actually I love that slave of mine. Now imagine if Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala loves you. Now how do we feel when the mother says, oh, I love you, your wife says, I love you, Oh, we just, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says, and when Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says He loves somebody, He calls Jibreel and says, hey Jibreel, I love so and so. You also love him. Jibreel calls all the angels in the universe. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala loves so and so. I love him. You all love him. And then, ثُمَّ يُضَعُ الْقَبُولِ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And then everything in the creation starts loving that individual. Through what? To taqarrab ila Allah, to getting close to Allah through nawafil. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Who has heard of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal? We call him Imam as-Sunnah. He was the one who stood and defended, the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnah. Plus he was one of the greatest muhaddith of our ummah, one of the greatest faqih of our ummah, and one of the greatest pious people who showed us taqwa. Daily routine of 300 rakats of nafil salat daily. ये कहानी नहीं है, ये कोई fairy tale नहीं, this is a fact. 300 rakats of nafil. You're probably going to ask me, how is that possible? Where did he? There's not enough time in the day to do 300. And it's not like nafil like we do, like the crow picking something, 2 minutes. You can imagine how they used to offer salat, but they had barakah in their time through nawafil and through taqwa and through all those, qualities of iman, So 300 rakats. I mean, we have a problem. दो चार रकात नफल, ये बहुत मुश्किल है, time नहीं है. We don't even have time for fard salat, and they have time for that. Qadi Abu Yusuf, who was the student, one of the most prolific students of Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, he was Qadi al-Qudat, in other words, Chief Justice. 200 rakats nafal every day. Imam Abu Hanifa himself, tahajjud all night. He used to offer the prayer of Fajr with the wudu of Isha for 40 years or more. Where do they get time for that? Allah SWT put barakat in their time, put barakat in their ibadah, put barakat in their work, put barakat in their ilm, their minds, their subhanallah. Because they were connected. And one of the most important means of that connection was through nawafil. Allah give me and all of us, that tawfiq, People spend how many hours, on it's just fuzul. Facebook, my God, it's unbelievable. How much time is wasted on these things? Not only time is wasted, how much akhlaq is wasted in these things? How many Even DNA is getting, is being, there's studies now that show that through this social media, this total engagement, even DNA structure is being, compromised to that extent. We don't realize what's going on. So suppose we discontinue all of that nonsense and start engaging in nawafil, start engaging in dhikrullah, start engaging in tilawat of Quran. What kind of lives are we going to have? How is it going to, in the workplace, how is that going to affect our productivity and our, our beneficence in the workplace even? It's going to have huge impact on everything, on our family life, on our business life, on our social life, on everything, you know. So everything is there, and it's free. It's free for the taking, Everybody can do it. The poor, the rich, everybody, you know. It's not like, we have to pay join the club and a huge membership, like joining Karachi Club or something, No, it's free for everybody. Just we have to do it, with the tawfiq of Allah. Does that help out a little bit? Yeah. Okay. 4 to 5. Inshallah, hopefully 5, not 4, 5, inshallah. So that means there's a deficiency in that salat. In the salat at-tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. Allah says that salat will prevent, it will actually wean people from these wrong things. So if it's not doing that, and Allah is telling the truth, it means that this is not really salat. Therefore, Abdullah ibn Abbas, the greatest, mufassir of Quran, the tarjuman of Quran, if you will, he says that the salat that does not stop one from these lewd and iniquitous acts, it's not salat at all. It's a tradition. It's an exercise. It's not salat. So again, we're talking about that salat which we're focused on. And we're focused on the meanings of that salat. When we say Iyaka na'budu, Iyaka nasta'in, and the Quran is replete with all of these hukuk al-ibad and hukuk Allah and all of these things, and if we don't get affected by that, and we're not changing our akhlaq, it means we're not offering a real salat. We're just going through movements, So a real salat is going to have that impact. But that real salat requires knowledge. It requires continuous, to have that powerful salat, we're going to have knowledge of what we're reading in our salat, what we're saying in our salat, what the Quran is telling us. And so if we're involved in that process, it's definitely going to change our akhlaq. It'll change the world. It did. It's already proven that. It changed Sahaba and it changed the early Muslims, It changed them totally 180 degrees. So it can change us as well. Right? Allah give us all tawfiq. Ameen.
Sheikh Sahab, one question.
Tanazzu.
So, I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
Salah, praying in at home versus at masjid. So when we say offering at home, with family, with children, parents, wife. So is that
Yeah.
okay, or do we need to go to masjid?
You see, masjid has its. Masjid is what? Let's look at this. When Nabi alayhi salam came to Medina, right? 13 years of struggle in Mecca, and now he's come to Medina. What's the first thing that he did of significance? He built the masjid. Yeah, after coming from Quba. And where did he get down in Quba? In the masjid. There was a masjid there, right? Yeah. So the first thing he does when he gets to Medina, the actual Medina, the first major project is building the masjid. This is the central, this is the maghaz, if you will, of Islamic society. Because masjid is such a place. When we said connect with the connected, where do you get connected? In the masjid. This is the place of the pious people. This is the place of the musallin. This is the place of the malaika. So masjid, being in the masjid and engaged in the actions of the masjid, it also not only connects us with Allah, it connects us with the entire community. As I mentioned, that was one of the things that struck me the first time I saw Salat in Jamaat. Not only these people are connected and focused, but they're connected and focused with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala collectively. So this is, a connection, and this connection, yes, in your house, nawafil. In your house, nawafil. If your ladies, there, if they don't come to the masjid, then they can offer their salat, and there should be a salat. And in fact, Nabi Sallallahu says, don't make your houses maqabir. Don't make your houses graveyards. Meaning what? Graveyards, nobody offers salat, right? So don't make your house like that. Offer salat in your house, but the fard salat should be offered in the masjid. In fact, nafil, the nawafil, and even the sunan, Nabi Sallallahu used to offer in the house, but fard used to offer in the masjid. So we have that connection, salat, which is going on in the house, but we also have that important, connection in the masjid. And the barakat and the ajr of that. And therefore, it is the opinion of the ulama across the board, some that it is fard. Imam Ahmad radiallahu anhu, he says that the person who hears the adhan, the man who is not a musafir, he's not sick, and he doesn't attend the masjid, his salat will have not been offered. It won't be acceptable. Because Allah says, Hayya ala salat, hayya al falah. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's nida, which He inspired us, to call, the adhan and the iqama. So He's calling us, Hayya, come, quickly, to salat, come to salat. Where? To the masjid. So, responding to that call and engaging in that, collective, and all those barakat and all those khairat that we, are not, that are not visible, that are not, we cannot understand through our senses, but they are there. The angels are there. The effect of that. So having that effect in fard salat is very critical, as well as the activities. Masjid is not just a place of salat. It's a place of ta'aleem and ta'allum. It's a place of da'wah. It's a place of tarbiyah. It's a place of, where it's the society's heart. And therefore our masajid used to be, 24 hours a day ongoing activity. So we need to be involved in that. We need to be connected with that, right? And that's like charging up our batteries, for the huge amount of activities and the huge amount of energy that we're going to require, spiritual energy. So yes, in the house. Now, if you're in a situation where the masjid is not available, or for some reason you can't get there, then by all means have a jamaat with your family, But don't make it a habit when you've got a masjid nearby. And thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you hear the adhan from 4 directions here in Karachi. You come to America, and then you'll appreciate it, huh? Yeah. One of our brothers, new Muslims, he said when he used to come to Pakistan, he said, you know what I love about Pakistan? You hear the adhan. You hear the adhan. There's a masjid. You can just go 5 minutes in the masjid. People come, people travel 50 miles in America to go to the masjid. And they do. And they actually come. They travel. Some of them, every day. People travel that far to their work. People travel that far to go to the masjid. So we have masjid which is right next door, so let's take advantage of that. Hopefully that would have answered the question to some extent. Yeah. So, yeah.
Sheikh, so I mean, like, I've got an old father, so I mean, he doesn't go to the masjid. So if I go to the masjid, then we're not gonna have a jama'ah at home. So, I mean, is there any exceptions, or
I wouldn't make it a rule because your father, if he can't make it, then that's fine. He can offer his salat. But if you're able and there's a masjid nearby you and you can get there, then you should go there. And then you can have nawafil in Jamaat as well. You can do that. And maybe some of the
Okay,
times,
jazakallah.
sometimes you might want to do it, but don't make it. I wouldn't make it a habit, because definitely it's the instruction, of Sharia that when we hear the nida, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, once a blind man came to Rasulullah, blind, right? He said, Ya Rasulullah, is it compulsory for me to come to the masjid? And then obviously he's blind, it's going to be difficult for him to get there. So he said, no, that's okay, you can make. And then as he was leaving, he said, what did you ask again? So then he posed his question. He said, do you hear the adhan? He said, I hear it. He said, ajib, answer it, respond. Meaning, come. Now, if someone has a difficulty and he really can't get there, then that's another story. But if we can, then we should get there, And then obviously your father or anybody else who is ma'dur, as they say, and is having difficulty, then there's no harm for him, Let him offer that. And if he's also, if your father is, if he's not getting to the masjid, perhaps he can have a jamaat with the ladies in the house. Ladies can offer that behind him also. That's another solution that you could have for that. But you should go to the masjid, inshallah. Bidnillahi ta'ala. Okay?
Jazakallah.
Wa iyyakum. Now, wasta'inu bis sabri was salat. To seek help. Actually, he didn't say that salat is difficult. He says seeking help through the medium of patience and salat is going to be difficult except for the khashiyah. Well, you see, because what happens? For example, we have a problem. What's the first thing we think about? Huh? Okay, who do I? If we're in Pakistan, okay, who do I know? Wasta kaun hoga? Huh? So, but those people who are khashya, khashya means what? Those people are not only afraid of Allah, they have the awe of Allah. They're overpowered. They're concentrating on Allah, and they're imbued with His, with His light, and they're connected with Allah. So if they have a problem, the first place they turn to is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they turn to patience. They realize if I'm patient with this, it's going to be, that's the solution. Being patient and bearing the situation, that's the solution. And offering our salat, and then seeking more direct help from Allah through the medium of salat. So the person who's connected, the person who's khashiyah, he'll be able to do that. The person like us, oh, who do I know? Who's going to get me out of this mess? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, So, you follow my point? So it's all about, our mind and heart set, where our minds and hearts are. So if they're connected, inshallah, there won't be a problem. If they're not, it's going to be impossible. Wallahu alam. Anything else? Huh?
We are already 30 minutes over.
We're 10 minutes over.
30 minutes over.
30 minutes over. Oh. Well, I'm enjoying the company, so.
It would be great if you can end up with dua.
Okay. So inshallah we'll make dua. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, whatever we've been talking about, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all, myself and all. Last question.
And it says that if someone gets that after 16 to 20 years of his life,
If somebody,
gets hidayah after
hidayah.
16 to 20 years of life, or he converts to Islam,
Yeah.
let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So he or she should offer the remaining prayers that he
If someone was not a Muslim, he accepted Islam, there's no necessity for before. Before Islam, that's clean slate. A person who was a Muslim, but he was not on the deen, yes, he has to make up for those.
And I have one question. I have been asking questions for everyone.
Yeah.
There's one question that I have in mind.
Okay.
That is related to a hadith that I read, and it was that for a hypocrite, the prayers of Fajr and the prayers of Isha is a difficult one.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So would that fit to us as well? That if we are getting delayed in offering prayers of Isha or prayers of Fajr, indeed they are difficult. Once you miss the Jamaat of Isha and it's like 1 a.m. in the night, you tend to believe that we should go to sleep or we should have
Yeah.
prayer. It gets difficult as the time passes by.
Well, you see, these type of hadith are kind of warnings and kind of to shake us up, And it's not to, and also hypocrisy is of levels. It's a kind of, we're all hypocrites to some extent, right? We say things and we don't do it, Just like me, I'm saying all these things and I don't, I'm not there. I'm saying all these things and I hope that inshallah gives me tawfiq to be able to do all these things. You see? However, there's a hypocrisy which is like I'm saying la ilaha illallah and I don't believe it. That's the kind of hypocrisy which is going to be, that's actually kufr. But I'm showing that I'm a Muslim, but I'm actually not at all. Alhamdulillah, hopefully none of us are of that category, so it's not of that level. So, but those people, because in Medina we have to keep in mind that there was hypocrites who actually were of that type. Because actually they were just waiting for any kind of opportunity, to get these new people who took over and took the carpet out of our feet, right, under our feet, to get back with them, So they're just showing that they were Muslims because of political expediency. So for them, obviously, it was very difficult because they didn't want to be there in the first place. So inshallah, we're not like that. But nafs is also making trouble for us. Shaitan is making trouble for us. Being human beings itself makes trouble for us. So don't get too frightened. But still, it means that there's a similitude to the actions of munafiq. So that should scare us enough that we should, wake up and be cognizant and inshallah take heed and be careful about our Salatul Fajr and Isha and every other Salat, inshallah. Is that clear? Barakallah. اوكي الحمد لله رب العالمين على خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه مداد كلماته الله الله نرسل ثناء عليك انت كما اثنيت على نفسك اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى ال سيدنا محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم انك حميد مجيد اللهم ربنا ظلمنا انفسنا وان لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا من الظالمين ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا ولم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الظالمين ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك ويا مصرف القلوب صرف قلوبنا على طاعتك ويا منور القلوب نور قلوبنا بنور معرفتك اللهم اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا وصل اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله جزاكم الله خير والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته